Remember when media wanted you to revolve around their schedule? It told you where, how, when. Well, something happened along the way. We changed. Words like on demand, streaming, and interactive all became part of the new media landscape. Today's media isn't about us. It's about you. When you want it, how you want it, where you want it. So we figured it was time to carve out our own space. A space to connect with you. Giving you the shows and content you want from the hosts you love and love to hate. Laughs? Sure. Insight? Of course. Breaking news when it happens and going along on the stories that matter. Giving you something new. This is media for the new world. Your world. A platform for an ever busy, ever mobile, ever evolving audience like you. This is about something new. Something you've always wanted. Something Iowa has needed. And now it has. This is Iowa Everywhere.
It's Wednesday morning here on the Iowa Everywhere Network. I'm Jared Stansbury alongside my co-host here, Jordan Bohannon. This is J-Bo and Jared, episode 1. Jordan, what's going on, man? It's different for you and me and than it is from Chris Hassel and Chris Williams or John Miller and Chris Williams. Those guys know each other. You and I are just starting to get to know each other, but I'm looking forward to this, man. This should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure getting to know you these last couple of months. I think this is going to be a really exciting, time, not only for us two, but the whole Iowa Everywhere Network. Chris is doing something great here, and I'm excited to tag along. And I think, us two are going to have quite the fun time.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think, here, especially for us to interact with the audience and things like that over the next several months. Jordan, I don't know if you know this, but Iowa State people don't like you very much.
Jared, I'm well aware. I was reading the comments as the tweets were going out. I think this will kind of hopefully smooth it over a little bit.
Well, I was on our forums and I was trying to tell people, I was like, man, you would be shocked to learn that what someone does on a basketball court maybe isn't a true reflection of who they are as a human being. Who would have ever thought,
I know we've been talking about that as we've been getting to know each other. The rivalry is just the rivalry. Like, I did what I could to. Hopefully I moved the needle with it. Me and George Niang are actually surprisingly good friends. A lot of people don't know that behind the scenes, but we talk about that all the time, and I've talked about that to you as well. I think when you have that moment to do something, whether you want to poke fun at other fan bases or just have a fun rivalry, I think I hopefully did that, and I hopefully athletes in the future kind of do the same way.
Yeah, I think you most certainly left your mark on the rivalry. But the one thing that I do think that we should talk a little bit about is what this podcast is going to be. And I think the thing that I felt really comfortable about with after you and I had talked a couple times is that I knew we both didn't want it to be Iowa State versus Iowa fighting with each other all the time, always arguing about the rivalry and things like that. Like, if we talk about Iowa State and Iowa, it'll be very infrequent. I think, I don't anticipate us ever talking about that too much. And it just, I don't know. I don't want to do a show where we come on here like Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless and start yelling at each other from an Iowa and Iowa State perspective. Because one, I don't think that's entertaining. And two, that does not sound like very much fun to create on a weekly basis.
No, and I think both of us have a lot of knowledge in not only basketball, but just in sports in general and life in general, both, being a part of Iowa so heavily through these last few years. And I think we can talk about a lot of important topics and continue to, hopefully have a relationship with our, great fan base. So hopefully we're going to build with this podcast and Iowa Everywhere as a whole.
All right. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is something that, is obviously pretty closely impactful to both of us, me with what I do for Cyclone Fanatic and working around college athletics, and then you as being a former student athlete. I'm interested in your perspective on this stuff. Is conference realignment and media rights, because I think a lot of times we talk about what the media rights mean to people in the boardrooms, what it means for what they can pay coaches' salaries and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we ever get the perspective of student athletes on what they think of conference realignment or what they think of when the Big Ten signs a $1.5 billion television deal. So let me ask you first, what, as a former student athlete, someone who was obviously very opinionated about name, image, and likeness and stuff like that, when you see things like that, what's the first thing that goes through your mind?
You just see the dollar amount, and it kind of blows you off the paper real quick when you look at it. You think about college athletics. Yeah, yes, it's big. It's not like professional sports though. Professional sports are a beast within its own, and I think the last decade has just been explosion on media rights. Social media has been a huge part. I feel like sports has gotten a lot more popular. But being a part of a Power Five team with Iowa and playing against other Power Five teams, you kind of realize how much of a business it is behind the scenes. You're flying on charter planes on weekday nights, and you have all this wonderful food that you get to eat. We're all so grateful for it, and you start realizing that there's a lot of money to be had. That our people around are making a lot of money. We're giving a lot, but there's a lot going out to other people. And I think that's what's starting to become into fruition for a lot of people that are understanding the business behind the scenes, that it's really important that, not only our athletes' rights are kind of taken first, because I think the next step is going to be athlete are going to get some sort of salary. It's inevitable by the amount of money that's being made. It's only, it's whether it's going to be a Supreme Court that, decides to have an ultimate decision, or Congress, forms a law, NCAA finally decides to go like they did with the blanket waiver with NIL. There's something that's bound to happen, but I think it's they're pounding on the door right now with revenue sharing, and I think it's coming.
Yeah, I was just going to say the revenue sharing. Kevin Warren had talked about that during an interview sometime last week, where he thought that was an inevitability. I'm interested to see how that changes the structure of what it means to be a student athlete, though, when you do something like that. Like, do they make you pay for your own school if they're going to pay you to play football or play basketball there? Those are the things that I just don't know. Because I feel like if they start to pay you a salary at that point, like you have to wonder, like, does the school have enough to do that and be giving out scholarships and all of those kinds of things and the food and all that stuff that you mentioned? So I'm just interested to see what the continuing discussion is there, because I think there's a lot of questions that could be asked that could probably go both ways, that both sides, the student athlete side and the administration side, probably don't really want it to go down.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's the most important thing, that, you look at the model right now, and it's far from perfect. The model beforehand was, brutally terrible, how it is impacting athletes. Coaches are getting exponentially richer and athletes stay the same with obviously their tuition, which is a lot, but it's nothing what the coaches are getting. And I mean, it is a job. You look at the hours you put in, you look at you look at everything that you do behind the scenes. You're so meticulous on your craft and wanting to be great at your sport. And you got to deal with social media. Social media is another beast out there alone. That's, a lot of athletes are going through a lot of tough times mentally, and that's another subject down the road. But I think there's just too much at hand for athletes to be given what they are given. I think that you kind of touched nail on the head, that if there is a salary that's going to be paid to these athletes, maybe education isn't even something that athletes even do anymore, because it's a minor leagues and more money is being brought in. So it's going to be very, very weird these next couple of years, I feel like. And NIL is already making it weird. I mean, there's Caitlin Clark's making $1 million from what it sounds like with Hy-Vee and all of her sponsorships that she's had just as a sophomore, junior in college. So it's an exciting time for athletes, but I think it's only going to grow the sport, in my opinion. I don't think it's going to impact, fans wanting to watch the sport.
After you obviously had been pretty opinionated about and been really at the forefront of pushing for name, image, and likeness and things like that, especially in the state of Iowa, going into your senior year, what now almost a year out from there, or over a year out from that, I guess, what do you think you learned from that entire process? What's the biggest thing that you took away from it?
I just think how much of a business it is. I mean, that's vague, but it's true. I think me, Geo Baker, and Isaiah Livers, when we kind of fought for NIL, that I believe we were one of the first student college athletes to meet with the NCAA president. And obviously it was off the books, it was private, and he was very respectful. But I just think talking with these people, and, I talked with people I thought I never would talk to. I had meetings with Senator Booker, with Senator Blumenthal, like these very respected government officials that, I mean, I'm in the Zoom call, dude, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here right now. I'm looking across the screen. I'm talking to a senator. Like, this is crazy. But I think I learned a lot in the process of not only, the sport, but also myself, or what I, hopefully can continue to learn through the future, and hopefully can make an impact in the future as well.
What was the biggest difficulty of that process? Like, was there anything about it that you'd step back and you're like, "Holy shit, man, like, I bit off more than I could chew here a little bit?"
Yeah, I think social media was tough, man. I mean, you know how it is being active on social media. There's a lot of people out there that just disagree with you, no matter if you're right or wrong. It's more of a if they like you or not. And I think that was the toughest thing. I feel like not only did I lose some fans from maybe from other teams, but Iowa actually. I feel like there's some Iowa fans that kind of parted different ways with me as well because I started speaking out, and that was really tough because of everything I kind of give into the state and tried to play the right way for so many years, and it was tough. But I knew what I was fighting for was kind of the greater good, and um, I feel like I helped hopefully a couple college athletes down the road, and continue to talk to a lot currently. But that's always really tough when you lose some fans and you try to speak your heart and they just don't want to listen to you.
I feel like it's probably especially frustrating because I can imagine that everybody that you're playing with, everybody you're playing against, all those guys are on your side. You know, every student athlete I'm sure you would come across was right there with you. So to see then your fans be the ones that turn on you, like I imagine that was difficult to work through. I
Yeah,
don't envy you on that.
yeah, it was frustrating, and there was also a lot of fans that were by my side, and they spoke up with me and stood by my side, and they were with the internet trolls fighting back. But it's always tough when you lose your own fan base and you did so much, but
Most of them were probably bots anyway. Let's just
that
be
is true.
honest.
Russian bots, they were hacked. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's something weird going on with that, but there's definitely a couple that spoke their mind, and I was always respectful. Someone came at me respectfully on social media. I'm always going to be respectful back, but there's always those few people that you guys know that as you know as well, Jared, that there's people that just don't want to have a respectful
Yeah.
conversation, and that's
No.
tough.
No. The thing that I think makes you a little bit different than some of the athletes that are out there with name, image, and likenesses you've seen with the transfer portal, I felt like you were able to do a really good job of harnessing your brand. Obviously, being from the state, like I think that probably certainly played into it as well. What do you like when you're someone who went through that process and you were in the way that your value worked is playing at Iowa, being from Iowa, like that certainly boosted you to see these guys that jump around and do these things that are looking for those things. Like what's your reaction in that standpoint where it's like, man, that just in my mind, that doesn't feel like that's how it should be as far as building a brand, but that's just my personal opinion, I suppose.
Yeah, I was because I was curious on what you're saying, what you were going to think of this too, because you being an Iowa State fan, there's Iowa State's heavily in the transfer portal, and that's
Hmm.
what's been their bread and butter so many years. Fred Hoiberg did a great job with that, and I feel like TJ's doing the same thing once he got here and trying to get all the great guys that are in the transfer portal. So it's definitely a slippery slope. I feel like there's a lot of positives to it because the waivers with NCAA can be so tough if there actually is an extreme circumstance and the player wants to get closer to a family member that might not be doing well, or something extreme like that. But there are also players out there that just don't accept and buy into the program. So it's a hard kind of slope to die on because I want to be supportive for college athletes, but there are also there's still kids out there that just don't know what hard work is, what they
Right.
should be doing to buy into the program. And I think that's you got to get a lot of props to Iowa State because they've done a phenomenal job with getting transfers and sticking with that program and understanding what they need to do to be great. And look at this last year that they had, and that no one thought they were going to be anything, and they end up making the Sweet 16. It's just extraordinary.
Yeah, and I think my biggest reservation with the transfer portal is that I don't even know the best way to put this. It's like an open door that everybody knows is always there, but you never know what's going to be on the other side of it. And I think we end up in a situation where there's a lot of kids who just see that open door. They see where they're at right now and they're like, man, I don't know that I like this situation, which is perfectly fine. But you go into that door and you have no idea what's going to be on the other side of it, whether that's you're playing Power 5 basketball and maybe you're sitting on the end of the bench or something like that and you haven't been able to work yourself into the rotation. You go into the portal. Well, then you got to remember too, you haven't been playing. You got no film. No one knows anything about you because you haven't been playing since you were in high school. Well, now you've got to go and play Division 2, or you've got to go and play at a really small school at the Division 1 level or something like that. And you don't get any of those amenities that you had before, all because you're just like, man, I think there's something better out there for me. And that's what worries me is that you see these people that get so so loose with it that they're like transferred around 2 or 3 times or things like that or whatever. And then all of a sudden you're ending up in a situation that's not better for you that you thought was going to be better. The grass isn't always greener type of thing. But I hate seeing kids lose opportunities, because they just saw an opportunity or they got maybe some bad advice from somebody and went into the portal, or they had an agent tell them they could go and make NIL money or somewhere else or something like that. Because I just think that's people at the end of the day that puts kids into a position where they can't be successful on some level.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I also, to kind of counter that, honestly, the way another way I can see that people kind of support it too is, these college coaches are making so much money nowadays that, this is literally their job for, if they have a transfer, for them to buy into the program and to stick with the program. If you have a transfer, then it should be on the coach because they're the ones making, millions of dollars. So I do see that counterpoint as well. But also, like you said, there is just so many guys that just don't buy in and they don't, maybe appreciate more what they have currently, and the grass isn't always greener. And, it's really tough to, to see, because I think the transfer portal, I don't see it going away. I think it's only going to be more freedom for these players, but I don't see either model being correct, honestly. And it's hard to kind of find that perfect model in anything you do in college athletics right now.
Yeah, so that takes me into another question. They talk now, the conversation or the buzzword is guardrails. We need guardrails on NIL. I don't know what effective guardrails there are that would even possibly exist at this point. I feel like it's a genie's out of the bottle situation, and you're probably not going to get it back in there. But is there anything in your mind that you think would be fair to players that maybe would not be in a situation where they could put some restrictions on it? Because I just don't think that they could legally probably be able to have anything stand up at the end of the day.
I don't know, man. It's hard to even see an enforcement of a rule being brought on now that the gates have opened up. I mean, do you see anything that could even remotely be okay? Because I don't know what the answer could be to that question.
No, and like people talk about, oh, they should put it in a trust or something like that, and like that's not how it should work.
No.
If someone earns that money, then they should have access to that money at the end of the day, and that's where I just think that I don't envy anybody that's in these rooms that has to make these decisions, because I think at the end of the day, like most people that work in college athletics are trying to do the right thing. I don't think that there's that many. There are certainly people surrounding college athletics that I think are out for the wrong reasons. I think that basketball especially is one of those sports that has a lot of those people that are out there that are trying to do things for the wrong reasons. But I don't think the people in the boardrooms are like trying to be intentionally malicious towards student athletes. Like, we have to keep our money, so we can't give the student athletes opportunities. I just think it's really hard. I think that it would be really hard to be in there and be like, we have to make these rules, because you can see where you say the slippery slope. You can see where you can go down a path where this could get really out of control, and that's why I don't know what the answer is, because and when these people are supposed to be some of the smartest people in the world running colleges and professors and things like that, if they don't know the answer, then man, we got a real problem, and that's where when I see people like Cory Booker, who I think is a really smart guy, like nothing against Cory Booker, but people like Tommy Tuberville and stuff like that come in here and start doing this. And I'm like, man, I don't have that much faith in the government a lot of the time anyway. So why would I have that much faith that you guys are going to be able to come in and the government's going to step into college athletics and all of a sudden everything's going to be fixed? That just doesn't seem realistic to me. And it seemed like for a long time, there were people that were in the positions of power that were relying on that possibility that they could step in, to where then they could bury their head in the sands a little bit and not just face the reality of what was coming. And that's what I think is unfortunate then, where you get some of these downsides we've had of this last year, is you went from 0 to 100 in literally in a press release, from the NCAA. And that to me was just where the NCAA basically went and said, yeah, we can't figure it out. So just like, F it, go do what you want to do. And I don't know. That's why I think that some of this stuff is so annoying, because I don't know if there is an answer. I don't know if there is a right answer, and you just have to deal with it on some level.
Yeah, I think it's to the point where I think it just be treated like a free market. Everything is, fair game. Obviously, there needs to be some sort of restriction on, making sure boosters are kind of out of it a little bit. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of I didn't see the NI collectives being.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you the collective. So that's the other part of it that I think is interesting, is so much of it has become what it's not meant to be. I always felt like you went about it the right way doing your podcast. You were doing your t-shirts and things like that. What we do at Cyclone Fanatic with people with t-shirts or having them come to events or things like that. And we're not, I don't think that we're generally going to work with people that haven't earned that on the field and built a brand, become someone that legitimately has a brand out there where they can, where they should be able to make money off of that. And not everybody has that, but I feel like right now we're starting to get into a position where brand doesn't matter. None of those things matter. It's just, we got to pay everybody fairly or something like that, or have contracts or things to protect the school. And that's just is like, that's where I sit there. I'm like, this isn't even what this is meant to be. This is not what it was ever intended to be from the beginning.
No, and yeah, I think the NI collectives have just kind of taken off, and it's not even connected to brand like you're talking about. There's guys that, I feel like I did a pretty decent job of kind of building, a fan base around myself through things, outside ventures that I was doing off the court, and obviously my on-court moments that I had. But there's a lot of these guys that are signing stuff and they haven't done anything on the field yet. They haven't proven themselves. They're just getting these big checks and have nothing to prove for it. So I think the market will kind of settle down and kind of figure itself out after this past year and this year ahead. But yeah, it is just a literally wild west right now.
Well, I think the perfect example of that is Quinn Ewers, who's going to be the new starting quarterback at Texas, who, from all accounts had signed $1 million plus deal to go to Ohio State and then transferred to Texas. I would imagine that there was probably some pretty significant monetary benefits of doing that as well. The kid literally hasn't thrown a pass in a game in 2 years, and he's made over 7 figures from what he can do on the football field. That makes no sense. Like, that just makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know. Yeah, they say, the market will settle down. I guess if that's how we're going to set it almost reminds me of, do you remember what year was that? That was 20, I guess it would have been the summer of 2016 when Kevin Durant went to the Warriors and the NBA salary cap exploded, and like Timothy Mozgov was getting like $40 million a year and things like that. It almost reminds me of that, where now people, I hope in several years, are going to sit down and be like, man, we shouldn't have given Timothy Mozgov $35 million or whatever it was, but that also would require some sanity in college athletics, which college athletics just generally never has enough sanity, I think.
Yeah. I mean, sanity has never been not only college athletics to it as a whole, but you look at the leadership at NCAA with Mark Emmert. I mean, there's just no reasoning behind anything I feel like he's been doing. And I don't know. I think a couple years will help once everything. I do believe the market will settle down. I feel like you're kind of against that, but I do think that there has to be some trials out there to kind of just test, because this is a market that's never been explored before. There's not many markets out there in the world that it's never been explored before. So I think this is one that will have its ups and downs for the next decade or so. And I think revenue sharing will kind of, honestly, that might be the evening balance of it all. NIL, we're talking about pennies, honestly, compared to what might be the potential payout for a lot of these athletes. At the Power 5, the big time Alabama schools, Georgia football, there's all these schools that could be paying their athletes a lot of money because of what they bring in. So I think that might be the balance beam of it all, but we're just going to have to see that. I don't think there's an answer right now.
The thing that was really fun to me when NIL was first starting was the idea of watching young people build their brands and build what they wanted it to be and what they wanted it to look like. For so long, the schools were the only ones who had control of those things. They were the ones who picked who was going to go and do the interviews. They were ones who were going to pick and have them be in the videos on Twitter or do all those other things and be that front-facing person of the program. And NIL, in my mind, opened the door for all those young people to go and do those things themselves and put their personalities on display however they wanted to. And that I'm sure that has happened on some level, but it feels like that could go to another level. That's what I'm excited for, is just seeing people be able to build their brands and see what they want to do with it, because anyone can do whatever they want to do with it, and it doesn't have to be held to the restriction of a school or held to whatever rules are out there. Like that, I think that will be cool to watch people be able to do that and see the creativity of it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, social media obviously taken out with TikTok and, Twitter being Twitter, Instagram blown up as well. There's so much opportunity out there for, I don't even see it as a sports thing. Honestly, I see it just as a content
It's just
creation
life.
thing.
Yeah, it's just
Exactly.
life thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
They're learning about just different ventures off the court and off the field that they can use for the rest of their lives with just building a brand for themselves. And a lot of these athletes aren't gonna, they're gonna make good money with NIL maybe, but it's the brand that you continue to build through your years in college that's going to set you up for your life. And I think once these athletes understand that it's going to be a lot more rewarding for them to kind of bite the bullet on some of these. They don't have to do every single NIL contract they do just to kill their brand, that they can just keep building through the years, and it doesn't have to be through sports. It's an off the court thing.
And the other piece of this conversation that I wanted to get your opinion on is UCLA and USC deciding going to join the Big Ten, and that league going up to 16 schools. As a former Big Ten athlete, what would be your appetite for a trip to Westwood, California in mid-January?
I mean, think about you just traveling from Iowa, cold winter, you going to California and it's 80 degrees, sunny.
That sounds a lot better than State College, Pennsylvania. I'll say that.
Right. That's what's so crazy though. You look at the Big Ten now. The Big 12 is pretty chaotic too, but the travel, you go from Penn State to USC on the same week. I don't know what the schedule is going to look like for football, but basketball, you're going to play 2 games in a week. So there's going to be, you have 2 away games. I think it's going to be fun. Big Ten was really smart to make that decision to add them. I think we're going to see a couple of conferences just kind of build their brands up, and we're going to see, instead of Power 5, we're going to have 2 or 3 power conferences that are just going to take over all these major sports.
I am interested to see how much UCLA loves their decision to join the Big Ten when they've got a Thursday night, Sunday night doubleheader in Rutgers and Maryland. Like that and that's where I feel bad too for all the Olympic athletes, the people who don't fly on private jet or charter jets and things like to their games. They just have to fly commercial, and you're going to be riding buses and all that kind of stuff. Like that sounds horrible, man. I feel bad for those athletes, especially the ones that, like with women's soccer, things like that. I guess I don't know what the level of competition is like in the Big Ten, but softball, baseball, like I would think that those ones, especially, they're looking at it and they're like, man, I could have been playing in Arizona for however many times, and now I got to go and play Ohio State. That doesn't sound near as fun.
No, I'm curious to see what they do for, like, is there going to be traveling implications on these schools on they can only play, USC and UCLA one time, or is there a home away? Like, it's going to, like, the next 5 years, I'm excited, man. Like, hopefully, this podcast continues to take off and we share a lot of moments with us, the viewers that are watching us and listening to us, because I think there's going to be so much explosion in sports and college, specifically, that it's going to be fun to talk about and just to live through what they're going through.
Let me ask you this. I didn't have you prepared for this, but I got a question for you. You got 4 schools. You got 4 more spots to get the Big Ten to 20 schools. Who are the 4 schools that Jordan Bohannon wants to see in the Big Ten?
The 4 schools?
Yeah, to get it up to 20.
I want to see Iowa State's number 1. I want to see Iowa State in the Big Ten. I think it has to happen that Iowa and Iowa State are together in the same conference.
It's okay. You can admit you're pandering just to get everybody to like you.
I'm not. I honestly think it's great. I think it's great to play more rivalry games. It's great for the sport. It's great for the schools. Iowa State's 1. Notre Dame is a no-brainer. Notre Dame, I think, will join the Big Ten at some point. The other 2, man, I don't know. I think there's a lot of options out there. It just depends on what route you want to go on, money-making wise, or just rivalry, right? There's so many different options that
I think Oregon and Washington would be good because they would be natural partners for UCLA and USC then. Yeah. I don't know. I find it hard to believe that they would leave like Stanford and schools like that out in the cold then too. But obviously, we're being realistic. Iowa State probably would not even be in the conversation, so that's where it would be a little bit different. But I think that would make for more fun games if you had schools like Iowa State or even like Kansas. Like if you could get Michigan State and Illinois and all those schools, Iowa going down to Kansas every year, like that would be incredible. It would make it so much fun, and obviously it would not be very fun on the football field, which is why Kansas would never get invited to join the Big Ten. But I think honestly, one of the best things that could ever happen is there's eventually a world where the top 65 or whatever like that just break away and go and create their own thing. and then they regionalize it, and break it up into divisions, almost like what the NFL or Major League Baseball or the NBA has, where, in a given football season, you're going to play 6 division opponents, 2 crossover opponents, and a couple of whatever, or however you want to work it out. And it's like Iowa State is playing Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Northwestern, and somebody else, and you break it up that way. And that I think would make college athletics way more fun, and do it all across the country where it's all regional rivalries. It's all people that you could know a Badgers fan from right down the street or something like that. And it's not just a bunch of patchwork schools playing against each other that have no affiliation to each other except for the league that they're in, despite being clear across the country from each other.
Yeah, and I feel like there's no affiliation anymore with these conferences. Like the Big Ten is no longer a Midwest conference. You just go down the line on these conferences. They're just been expanding to bigger conferences. And I mean, the Big Ten, there's 14 teams. It doesn't even make sense. The Big Ten, the Big 14 now, the Big 12. Is there 12 in the Big Ten or in the Big 12?
There will be after the new 4 come in Texas and Oklahoma league, but there will be. There's only 10 right now. Yeah.
So I mean, the whole thing is bizarre. I think everything it's. You just look at the names. It's the same thing as what we were just talking about, the revenue sharing and everything. It's knocking on the walls with the breaking away from all these conferences. So I don't know, man. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what happens next couple of years.
This is another random question that came up while we were talking about this.
Wait, I do want to touch.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was kind of going on a tangent. Sorry.
No, I just remembered this. You just said Nebraska, and we were just talking about before the show that we weren't going to talk about college football. But dude, we have to talk about Nebraska, right?
Man, dude, I'm gonna be honest with you. You're gonna judge me here for a second. So I grew up a Nebraska fan. My mom and dad are season ticket holders to games in Lincoln. So I'm ready for this conversation. I guarantee I'm not going to say what you expect me to say. So no, I'm all for it. I am 100% out on Scott Frost as a halfway Nebraska fan. I'm not a real Nebraska fan anymore. I hardly can follow what they're doing because I'm too busy with what I do otherwise. But man, what he has done with that program has been it's honestly sad, I think, as a college football fan to see how far they've fallen. And I know everybody else loves to laugh about it and things like that. But man, I think back to like the late 2000s when Nebraska was pretty good with Ndamukong Suh and Taylor Martinez and those guys, and like how much fun their games were on a given week. And to not have that anymore, I think it just like takes a piece of the sport out because of what their role is in the sport's history. And it just makes it a little less fun, but I know everybody else loves to watch them lose. So I can understand why.
I'm curious to see your thoughts on this. How did you go to, first off, the first part of the question, did you used to go to Nebraska games growing up?
Oh yeah. I grew up, I went every week, dude. Like for my entire
went every
life,
single home game.
Oh yeah. Yeah. For my entire life, I've basically been going to college football games every Saturday in the fall. So
okay.
Yeah, it was like our family thing. Like my mom went to school there. My sister graduated from there a couple years ago. So it's kind of it's just in the blood.
I didn't know if it was like a seasonal thing. You just went to one game, but that's got to be tough. I'm just curious, like how do they sell out every game? How is that possible? They just have that passionate of a fan base?
Well, they do cheat a little bit.
So all the boosters like buy up the tickets and
there's been a handful of times where I think they went into the week and I think even last year there maybe was a couple times where they were really worried that it was going to end, and then they created a program and don't get me wrong, this is a cool program. I'm not making fun of it, but it also is ridiculous how they've done it with the sellout streak. It's not hardly even real, but the boosters, their big boosters, will buy all of the remaining tickets and then they'll donate them to inner city schools in Omaha and Lincoln, which is cool. That's awesome. That's really cool because I'm sure that creates a lot of opportunities for young people who would never have a chance to go to a Nebraska game to do that. But at the same time, then you can't call it a sellout, I feel like, when you've got to donate the tickets to kids at schools.
Okay, well, you made it really awkward for me because I was going to make fun of that, and now it's not even something to poke fun.
You can't even make fun of it. Like, it's one of those things, like, it's so ridiculous, and knowing the reasoning behind it, it's really ridiculous. But then it's like, man, okay, I guess if they're going to do something dumb, like, at least make it to where somebody is benefiting from it,
Yeah, no, that's cool that they do that. I didn't even know that. So that's really, really special that they do that.
Yeah, I think they just started that last year, but before, I mean, up until these last couple years. And the thing is too, like the experience of going to college football games, I just don't think is something that people have an appetite for that maybe they did 25 or 30 years ago at the end of the day, because obviously now every game is on TV. You can watch it from your comfort of your home. You don't have to worry about other people. And as someone who sat in the seats at Memorial Stadium, they're small as hell. You're cramped in with a bunch of people, and you sit there the entire time and you're like, man, I could be sitting on my couch drinking a beer and not dealing with all of these people right now, and probably have a better view of the game too. So it's always fun to be part of the atmosphere, but it's also not that fun to just be at a college football game is in 2022 is what it maybe was a handful of years ago.
You did bring up a good point about the appetite for sports. I think it's weird that you brought that up, because I was just thinking about that the other day, that there's still passionate fan bases out there, but I mean, even thinking back to high school games. Like I remember my oldest brother playing, high school basketball, and the place was, sold out. They were only letting people in then when they were walking out the store. And now there's like no one at high school games, I feel like, that there used to be. I know we were going to touch on the football game at Kinnick too, but I just think there's just not them. I don't know. Is sports dying from a viewing standpoint, or is it social media just taking over so much that people just rather watch on their phones or follow it on Twitter?
Yeah, I think that there's just so many more entertainment options than there ever was before. And as someone who lives in Des Moines, like I have no affiliation to any of the high schools, so I have no appetite on a Friday night to go and watch high school football. But however many years ago, what you're either going to do, sit and watch TV, or you're going to go to the high school football game, and you don't really have any other choice. So I think that probably plays a role in it. I think too, like I remember when I played at the state basketball tournament, and you'd go to a 1A game and it's packed. And then you go to a 4A game and it's like half full. And you sit there and you're like, man, how is there not more appetite for that? And maybe that's just people don't have the same level of pride in it. I don't know if people maybe don't feel as affiliated to it or connected to it, or I don't know what the deal is. But you're definitely right. I think that's you can look at colleges across the country too, and they're the same way. How many different schools out there can't put people in the seats? USC and UCLA can't put people in the seats.
Even Iowa basketball too. I mean, if I know Iowa State always rats on Iowa for not, filling that. I mean, yes, it is a bigger arena. I mean, 15,000. But you look at Iowa State, they sell out their basketball games every single game.
Well, so in Iowa, they give people the free pizza to get in, don't they? In the student section sometimes.
They did do that last year. I do remember that. They did something. I can't think of it was pizza or T-shirts. Dude, I don't know. I think it's like even before I got to Iowa, and I don't know, man. I don't know. Like I think TV is a big part of it. You're right that there's just more options for entertainment. I'd just rather sit on your couch and watch it. But there's just something about going to a sporting event. I mean, prices too. Honestly, might be tickets prices too. But I think even from my own perspective, and I've always wondered if I've thought about this before, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I've always wondered if I felt this way because I've been so close to athletics now for long enough that you almost become numb to it, or you just get tired of it. It feels like work, so you just don't really care that much anymore. But I'm a lot less passionate about sports than I was when I was younger. And obviously when you're younger, you don't have near as many things to worry about, so it's a lot easier to worry about trivial things. But even now, my appetite to watch any random college football game, or to watch, or on a Saturday, if Iowa State's not playing and Nebraska is, and my mom and dad ask if I want to go to the game, I'm like, man, I go to a college football game every week. Like, I'm good. This is my 1 week that I don't have to go to one. I'm probably just going to chill, and that to me is where I don't know if a lot of other people are that way, but I just don't feel as passionate about it as I ever did before. But I think I'm maybe too close to it at this point. I'm just used to being jaded about college or just athletics in general. You get around enough people and spend enough time around some of these people, man, and you start to be like, man, this stuff can be kind of stupid sometimes. And that's where I'm not going to make fun of fans, because I love fans, like the people that are so fanatical about it, to care that much about something that you have no control over. I don't know if that's impressive or if it's sad sometimes, but it's cool to that's where sports is cool, is when you have those people that care that much, and then things can pay off for them, and how important it is to them, and they can have those great moments. That's pretty special, and that's like the one special side of sports. And I wish that sometimes I could feel that again, because I don't think I can anymore. Yeah. Well, I was the same. I mean, I remember playing, these last 5-6 years at Iowa, that I don't think I went to 2 football games of 3 football games maybe of all those years. And I don't know, I just was more inclined just to sit. We normally did have practice, like either right before the game or halftime, but I would always go back to my apartment and just watch it on my TV. I just think it was more it was fun, more fun that way, just being with friends and watching around the TV and not have to worry about some fans screaming in your ear. It is great seeing that, but at the end of the day, it's more chill just to relax and watch it and be on your phone and maybe sports better or something.
Right. One thing well, yes, definitely that. One thing I did think was really cool, you mentioned it before, was the football game last week at Kinnick Stadium between Iowa City High and Liberty. And I saw some highlights, man. The atmosphere in there sounded amazing.
It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, incredible. And how do we get this done more? That's what I want to know. How do we play more games like this in these huge venues because imagine the thrill that is for those athletes. Like I'll never forget the first time I walked into Wells Fargo Arena and you see how big the place is and you're like, holy cow, man, like you're on the biggest stage. Like I can't even imagine what it's like for a high school football player to walk out on the field at Kinnick Stadium and know, like, even though there's not going to be 60,000 or 70,000 people in here tonight, it's still going to be loud and it's going to be rocking and everybody's going to be excited. And we get to play on this big field with all these people around. That's so cool, man. I hope we can figure out a way to do that more often.
Yeah, you literally touched on everything I was about to say. I mean, you even said it earlier about Wells Fargo playing at the state tournament and watching these 1A schools pack the arena. I think it's great for high school sports to do stuff like that because that, like exactly what you just said, all these athletes are saying like, oh my gosh, this is what I could be potentially. This is my dream of playing here. And they one, get that accomplished, and two, maybe even provide some more motivation for them to get to that level. I think it's just fabulous for the sport, and it was really cool. I honestly wish I would have went to the game just to see the atmosphere because it looked awesome.
Yeah, I think it would be really cool if we could figure out a way to get it where it's like they're going to play, bring in a couple of the best teams from Des Moines or something like that, and then a couple of the best teams from the east side of the state, and then they're going to play at Kinnick Stadium, and you're going to have like 4 games in a row, and they're all going to be on TV. Like that would be so cool, and I don't know. That would probably be tough to put all of those moving pieces together. But I feel confident that if someone was going to be able to put the infrastructure in place, that administrators and coaches, like they would jump at that opportunity to be able to do that for their student athletes. I don't know. I think that would be super cool to do like a whole Iowa high school football showcase and have it on Channel 13 or something like that, where people across the state can watch the best teams in the state all go head to head on the big field at Kinnick Stadium.
Even if it's like the small schools, I mean, I love small town Iowa. I think it's what makes Iowa so great. And these fans, that are a part of the school and their community, they are so passionate about, wanting their community to be great and grow great kids into the state of Iowa. So I think even just like small teams, like being a part of that, I mean, you just talked about 1A schools, they'll show out the state tournament for Wells Fargo and pack the arena. And I think, anytime you can get small town Iowa teams involved, I think that's more beneficial for, Iowa City West and, Iowa City High, Liberty, all these Iowa City schools playing there. But I feel like the more we can keep up bringing these small town Iowa teams, I think it's more beneficial for the state as a whole too.
I don't know what class North Lynn is in football, but they need to play like Van Meter or something.
Get like a small town, like I don't even know, like a very small town in Western Iowa and bring them all the way over to the east side. There'd be like a convoy of just trucks just going through Highway 20 all the way through to Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area.
Yeah, that would be pretty unbelievable, man. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we got to figure out a way to do that. I wish they could do it in Ames. I understand why they wouldn't though, with the natural grass. Don't want to tear it up, and obviously having the turf in Iowa City and Cedar Falls would be crucial for that, especially you're going to play a couple of games. But no, I think that was so cool. They got to figure out a way to do that again. And shout out to my guy Mitch Moore, who's the head coach at Iowa City High. He used to work at Iowa State and was a coach in this area for a long time. He's been a great coach out there at Iowa City High. They're going to have a really good team again this year. All right, last thing that we want to talk about. We're going to do this every week where we're going to have some different kind of stories. They might be off the wall. Most of the time, we're going to try and keep them to Iowa as much as we can. This one, this week we talked about maybe doing, I don't know, what did we call it? What did you have it written on as the idiot of the week or something like
Yeah,
that?
we could have like
Yeah, or dumbass of the week. Yeah, the
dumbass of the
dumbass of
week.
the week. Yeah, yeah. This guy is our inaugural dumbass of the week. This story is in the Sacramento Bee. I'm not 100% sure why the Sacramento Bee is covering crime in Iowa, but apparently they were this past week. This is from that story. Quote, a dad told police he drank 12 Twisted Tea alcoholic beverages at a friend's house before driving with his 4-year-old daughter, according to police in Iowa. When a 32-year-old man got to a traffic signal in Des Moines, police say he passed out. First things first, do not drink and drive, especially when you have your 4-year-old child in the car. If you're out there listening and you have a 4-year-old kid and I ever hear that you were driving after drinking 12 Twisted Teas, that's a significant concern. That's the first part of this entire situation. But continuing on, it says officers were called to the stoplight at about 10 p.m. Sunday, August 14th, and it took them several minutes to wake him up. According to a Des Moines police report, the Jeep Liberty SUV was in drive and the keys were in the ignition. The 4-year-old girl was unbuckled and not in a child safety seat, police said. They woke him up, and the guy said the man admitted to drinking 12 hard iced tea drinks, and he said he was a 5 on an intoxication scale of 1 to 10. He said he could feel the effects of the alcohol. I don't know about you. I think after 12 Twisted Teas, one, I most certainly would be able to feel the effects of the alcohol, I think. But two, a 5. Are we impressed or do we need to get old buddy some help? Like, I think that there's some significant concerns here.
I drink 12 Twisted Teas. I don't even think, like, first of all, don't ever drink and drive. This is not funny, but it's funny. But I don't even think if I had 12 Twisted Teas, dude, I don't even think I could put the key in the ignition.
No.
I don't even think it's possible for me to start the car.
That's that's so much Twisted Tea. And I've never seen Twisted Teas that come in like normal sized cans. It's always the big, the silos, you know, 25 ounces or something like that. He had to have drank well over 150 ounces of alcohol in one sitting.
The best thing is, like, it's like you're with your friends, like, talking about how drunk you are. You're like, oh, I'm fine. I'm just a 5 out of 10. You're just absolutely blitzed. Like, you have no idea what's going on. Like, I can just totally imagine that guy saying that. Oh, I'm fine. I'm just a 5. And the kid probably crying in the back seat. The officer, I don't even know. The officers had to be laughing. Like, obviously, it's child endangerment. Like, it's not funny.
That's child endangerment. Yeah. So not very funny, but at the same time, yeah, it is like it.
Thank God no one was hurt. Like,
right.
It's
Thank God
not,
no one was hurt.
Yeah, it's not funny. Like, now hindsight 2020 that no one got hurt and the child is safe. But man, I don't even know what to say to this.
Yeah, I don't know. That
12?
man has done
12.
12. Yeah, 12.
What'd you say after 10? Let me get 2 more.
And 12 is such a specific number too. Like, was my man counting them? You know, and that's what I don't understand. If I'm gonna start drinking 12 of anything, I'm not counting them. At that point, I don't want to know. You know, I don't want to know how much I've had. So the fact that he was so specific when he had 12 Twisted Teas, that to me is, this guy has some, like, I don't know, he's got some significant things that he needs to work out, because if you're counting to 12 Twisted Teas, then you've stayed too sober for having had 12 Twisted Teas. That's my personal opinion.
And hey, there's nothing wrong having 12, but just don't get in the damn car.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
Don't get in the car and just like hope that someone else can take care of your kid.
Yeah. Why was the kid with him when he had 12? That's what the most bizarre thing is.
Yeah. All right. There's one other story here that I did want to talk about really quick. The headline is Oklahoma man allegedly killed fishing partner over Bigfoot fears. In Oklahoma man accused of killing his fishing partner over the weekend allegedly told police he carried out the murder after the victim summoned Bigfoot. Larry Sanders is charged with the murder of Jimmy Knighton while the two were noodling near Ada, Oklahoma on Saturday.
Noodling?
Do you know what noodling is?
No, what's noodling?
All right, so I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm like 95% sure that noodling is when you go to a river or something like that and try and put your hand in catfish holes at the bottom of the river and pull a catfish out of the water like that. I've never seen it done. I know people who have done it. I'm not 100% sure that it's legal to begin with, but it's kind of like a badass, crazy way to be fishing.
Wouldn't that be don't catch it like nip at your hands or something?
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
Yeah.
that's why it's like super dangerous. I think that
Yeah.
they could bite your hand off or like significantly injure you. So this is one of those things that, obviously
I'll pass on that way to fish.
yeah,
I
serious
ain't doing
concerns
that.
already to start with. The bizarre incident unfolded on July 9th after Sanders and Knighton got into a physical dispute while the pair were fishing the South Canadian River. Where's it at? Officials said Sanders confessed to a relative to carrying out Knighton slaying. The two men were friends. Sanders ultimately turned himself. Gosh, man, where's the best part of this story at? I can't find it. Oh, authorities who suspect Sanders was intoxicated at the time of the alleged killing haven't released a specific motive. Under questioning, however, Sanders allegedly rambled about Bigfoot. His statement was that Mr. Knighton had summoned Bigfoot to come and kill him. That's why he
Oh
had to
my
kill Mr.
gosh.
Knighton. That is how okay, so now they know that we know he was under the influence of something. Do you think he had more or less than 12 twisted teas while he was noodling before he killed his friend because his friend summoned Bigfoot?
I think Buddy was on something more than alcohol.
Yeah, that's probably
I think
fair.
he was tripping shrooms or something.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Oh yeah, I just saw this guy's picture. 100%. Yeah, that's not
Is
a
it possible to pull it up or no?
Oh yeah, it's on the Google Doc. You can pull it up on there. It's
Oh
like
my. Oh,
yeah,
yep, I see it. Yeah.
yeah. That
He
that does not look like a guy who was just drinking some twisted
no,
tea.
he got a hold of some hard stuff.
Yeah, those are our two idiots of the week. The Oklahoma man who killed his friend over Bigfoot, and then the guy who got so drunk that he passed out with his 4-year-old in the car. All right, man. Anything else that you want to touch on before we wrap this thing up?
I don't think so. Yeah, it was good. I'm excited, man. I think this is gonna be great. I think we have a great connection, and Iowa State. Regardless, I think it's worth listening to, and I'm excited for what's in the future.
For sure, man. I'm right there with you. I'm looking forward to doing this and growing it and figuring out exactly what the best way for us to do this is and how we can be a good team. I'm looking forward
Yeah,
to it.
and
So
that's the best thing. Like we're not perfect, but I think the more we do this, the more we get after it, the more we get to know each other, the better this is gonna be. So hopefully we have a lot of people that stick around and make this a weekly home for them.
if you've got any questions, suggestions, things you want us to talk about in the future, you can always tweet at us. I'm at Jared Stansbury. I don't know what your Twitter handle is. You can go
I
ahead and
couldn't even
shout it
tell
out.
you. Jordan Bohannon 3. I don't even know.
Yeah, just look him up. Yeah, you'll find him.
I'm not
He's
on
not
Twitter that
hard.
much like I used to be.
He's not too hard to find. I'm sure you'll be able to find him, but you can send those things our way and we'll get to him in the future. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you guys again soon.